Hi, this is Shadi, and today it's gonna be Korea versus Japan. It's gonna be two different styles that are highly aesthetic, highly beautiful and technical, and it's gonna be very different, but at the same time they have their similarities. To the untrained eye, a lot of the gripping might look very similar, but we're gonna dive deep. They're both different. One is a very quiet beast that will give the impression of passivity, while the other will just keep you on the move, exhaust you mentally and physically, and once you cannot take it, that's well, they'll go in for the kill. So it's gonna be a very different episode. Specifically the grip fighting sequence, it's gonna be the longest because there's just so much detail to unpack. There's just so much tactics to unpack, particularly on the Korean side, back from the old school days and even till this day. So this episode we're gonna go through the grip fighting and followed by the throwing, because the throwing will really reflect the grip fighting, and the grip fighting reflects the choice of throws, obviously. So this episode is gonna be the big one is the grips, as I mentioned this. Finally the signature throws, the top three if I like to call it, and which will also reflect the grip fighting as well. And finally the common throw, and it's gonna be the seoenage. The seoenage of the Japanese, different from the Korean, and of course that will all be linked back to your kumikata basically. So the first one is obviously the Japanese gripping. I always talk about it, is that it's basic sleeve and lapel, and the simplicity works best, but I always, or sometimes I fail to mention that the Japanese give this false sense of security, even if you have your deep Russian arm or Georgian arm. But if they have their particular grip and they have this particular opening, even though you have your grips, they will still strike. We've seen this with Inoue, we've seen this with Maruyama, we've seen this with Yoshida, all of them. So that's one very clear aspect of the Japanese gripping. Here you have the other choice, which is the underarm and the lapel. Here you see Kosei Inoue doing Uchimata Uchigari with his grip. This is for the same stance opponent. So they stand still, very like they say like their arms are fish hooks. They don't tend to use them, they're just like a connection. But once they have that opening, they are just sitting there and waiting. But when they have both their hands on you, it's go time. There's no need for big movements. It's just static, but also very much waiting, and once the time is right, it's explosive entry, and that's it. So for the Korean, here you see it's one of Jian's old tactics. Here the grip fighting, he has stuff that are now considered illegal, like breaking with both arms, one grip. Here you see pushing and constantly moving and pushing it against his stomach. That will make his opponent look passive, but now it's gonna make both of them look passive, and it's gonna be a Shido for both. So it's kind of like a dirty tactic if you want, but here constantly on the move, constantly flailing the lapel. But here especially this, like pressing the arm on the stomach, he does this a lot, and it's gonna make the other look passive, but now it is considered illegal, both breaking the grip with both hands and here pressing, because you yourself are not attacking, you're just stalling the game, and it's considered, I would say, is a bit unethical. So unless it's the breaking with both hands, I don't fully disagree with it. Here is the new modern one, and that is the signature of the Koreans, and that is like the constant pushing, pulling, kind of like throwing your fishing hook into the water with the lapel. That will keep your opponent really guessing, don't have his solid grips, and you're gonna keep them on the move. You can't be static and just attack. So here you see the difference between the Japanese and the Korean. Here you see Jen really keeping it highly on the move. Also the hips, they are constantly shifting, going the sideways, semicircles, in and out. Also another thing is that sometimes they might grip the lapel very low, like almost on the lower part of the pec, which will really give them a lot of movement or a lot of space to move the lapel, especially for kochigari or sotogari, like really taking it up and then pushing it to the face. Choi Min-ho does this as well. So it doesn't have to be like they are basically going against the grain. You have the Georgians, the Russians, and the French going to the neck and all the way down to the back, but they go the opposite way. They mirror the back, but on the pec lowered, but will really give them a solid grip and really flailing it and really destabilizing someone with the movement you saw Chen doing. So here you see, after a lot of movement, he broke completely the posture and the mentality of his opponent and finally struck with Tomoe-nage. The other thing about Korean I find it interesting is the kake part of the throw. Like, the hand gestures in particular is that they tend to collapse into each other and strike down almost like a sword. Usually when you throw down, you have like the big pull on the sleeve and you have the big punching down with the lapel in Uchimata, for example, but will leave your arms like really pushed forward and really spaced out. But here you see it's like everything comes close together to the chest, almost like cutting with the sword, kind of like doing Seoi-nage, but for other throws like Ko-Uchigari and Osotogari. Here you see and demonstrating it for his Ko-Uchigari. Here he's demonstrating how important the hand gesture is. Here he steps to the side, but here he shows that it is very important to push down and really collapse your elbows together, and that will consist of 90% of the throw. But in Ko-Uchigari he only puts his leg as like a I don't know, like a block. Basically, he's not even reaping. So let's go to signature throws. Obviously, I've talked about this. Here you have the Toshihiko Koga's famous Seoi-nage, far different than the Korean. It really does explain the I have one grip, which is one arm. I'm like very silent, very passive, but if I have that space, I'm gonna go in, just like as you see here. False sense of security given to Uke. Here you see like they were both just static and then done, boom, it's finished. Very different than Korean, which is constantly flailing your lapel, pushing and pulling your sleeve, moving around. They just need that false static motion in order to like really strike here. Great example. Once again, a lot of strength is needed as well. Koreans use it for explosive going down to the ground, so it's a different employment of strength basically. So here you see the other one is obviously Uchimata. Great choice of throws. Tsukasa, Yoshida, Kosei Inoue, Shohei Ono, Joshiro Maruyama all excel at this throw. Basic entry, you know, from like here she has her opening, boom, goes in. Very strong and firm grip, but very static. It's not flailing and like really shaking and shaking your opponent and destabilizing them. You just need to have your grip and your opening, and then just be very calm and patient. That's basically their entire game. And also it really shows in Shohei Ono's Osotogari, this famous Osotogari, where the Mongolian had a very dominant grip, but Ono had his grip nonetheless. And here, boom, he strikes. There is strength, obviously, but also there is timing. So the Koreans, obviously I don't need to say this, which is the Morote Seoi-nage, cross sleeve, or just normal kumikata. Here you see like constantly on the move, constantly, you know, playing poker with your hands, basically. Here also the reverse, I'm gonna talk about it in a little bit. So here it's the explosiveness needed with both arms needed to be connected, and on the move it's gonna, when they're constantly on the move, it's gonna make this explosive power going down and really shooting for Seoi-nage far easier, which really complements their gripping in my opinion. So here you see it moving, and bam, it's finished. It's aesthetic, it's very much explosive and technically elite. They're very famous for it for this particular reason, and the gripping plays a huge role. So the other one is Ko-Uchigari, all all the highly elite Koreans like Jian and Bol also had this kochigari. So here you see the hand gesture really plays a role. Also the cross gripping is very big in Korean judo. He doesn't reap with the leg, that's what makes it so special. You see it here, he just blocks it. Even he doesn't even cup his leg, he just puts the heel and lifts his toes up. He doesn't even cup like your traditional kochigari, which is very special and unique to them, and it's very aesthetically pleasing. I like watching this all day. I've tried to imitate it myself in randori. So here you see circles around, but the hands are doing most of the work, and the leg is just there to block. So Ants kochigari is really something. And finally, of course, is the Korean reverse seoinage, which is invented by the legendary Choi Min-ho, flailing with the lapel, and then you just get it, and it's just so genius. I still cannot get over the fact that, you know, he's gripping so little of the entire gi, and yet he was able to cause uke to coil up and then really like swirl almost like a tornado and fall directly into that ippon. It's a great invention in modern judo history, and from Korea, of course. So here they were already very famous for their seoinage, and now here adding their own variation. It is just absolutely commendable, and it is a highly successful throw, because it's just, I mean, there is an easy fix to it, but when people panic and they try to resist, they're most likely they're gonna lose, and that's basically the foundation of judo. Here you see multiple Koreans do this, Anshan Grim and Bol, Choi Min-ho, even Fabio Basile does it. So it has made its way outside of Korea. So now let's compare finally the common throws, and it's gonna be seoinage. So the fact that they are very static and waiting for the right moment will really push their preference towards a standing seoinage, because there is distance, there is someone that's like really putting his arm out, and they are creating the space, so to speak, really depending on what they are giving you. And here, bam, you just go in. Also, they are doing drop seoinage, I understand that, but for the Japanese expression, particularly the kumikata, that's really static, and seeing someone that's just passive in front of you and then exploding, it would be best for them to choose the standing seoinage, because it is easily accessible. They're both still standing. Going down is going to take a long time, and also it is predictable for someone that is static in front of you. But for someone that's constantly on the move, for Koreans, it's far more startling to go down, and also they have both grips. So also having one grip really is not the best thing for the drop seoinage, because it's not gonna completely break the posture like a two-handed grip, obviously, and will be very prone to counters, etc. So seoinage for the Japanese, or the gripping philosophy, the standing variation suits their gripping far more, in my opinion. The Koreans really like shaking, constantly pushing and pulling and moving. It's best to go for a drop variation, because it really suits their type of gripping. So this is what I have to say for their seoinage. Also the choice that they have, like cross gripping and also sleeve and lapel, having both hands is far better for the drop seoinage, because you won't be that prone to counter attacks as someone dropping, just having one grip or one side, like just one hand basically as contact, because they're gonna have so much options to counter you with. So that's basically it. I find that these both styles of judo, they can complement each other. You can use, for example, the gripping tactics for the Korean, constantly keeping them guessing, constantly keeping them on the move, and then you can obviously finish with like uchimata rather than seoinage or drop taiotoshi. I know drop taiotoshi is big in Korean Judo, but the top three in my opinion are the reverse, the classical Morote, and of course the Kochigari, which goes great as a feint for Seoinage. So you can really combine the two in my opinion. The Teiwaza, for exactly the Kake part of their throwing, like the Osotogari and the Kochigari, like you see dropping like a sword. You can also like really keep them on moving, but finish maybe with like a Japanese style throw, like an Uchimata or a Tomoe-nage. So this is mainly it. If you have anything else to add, let me know down below. Also, consider supporting me on Patreon. I have exclusive content for the patrons only. The link will be in the description. Also, check out Josh Simon's t-shirt shops for historical t-shirts and also historical articles. So if you have anything else to add, let me know down below. This was Shadi, and thank you for listening.